Hi, I'm Julia Brennan, Director of Local Government, Housing and Communities at Transform.
Hi, I'm Russell Moffatt, co-founder at Metastreet and 20 years working in the business.
We've worked together since, I'm going to say 2018, working to support local authorities to bring in discretionary licensing. First council was Waltham Forest.
I was just fresh out of Newham at that point.
Right.
But yeah, we've worked together quite a lot since, haven't we?
Yeah.
I'd like to think we've made a big difference. We've sort of focused on different areas. You've very much focused on the sort of people side and the policy and the carefully implementing of schemes and getting them landed safely.
Getting the schemes landed, then helping councils to implement them.
Yes.
So process, governance.
And that change is really important because there's a lot that goes on. And then really, mostly picked up on terms of the delivery side, which I know you've done a lot of planning, workforce planning, just to make sure the infrastructure is there to sort of catch the big plan that all of a sudden needs to be delivered. And then through word of mouth, in many ways, just gone through different authorities, and it's been fun.
And we're seeing a lot of councils coming back round now, actually.
Yes.
Second, third scheme.
No, I'm starting to feel old when you say that.
Yeah.
5 years cycle.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it's been a great partnership.
Yeah. No, and I think there's a lot more to do together. The world's changing rapidly, radically. And I think we're focused on trying to help local authorities do more.
Make a difference.
They've got limited resources. How can we help them go farther, do more, be better?
And improve the private rented sector.
Yeah, that's 100% what it's about.
From your point of view, how will the new Renters' Rights Act affect the balance between renters and councils, and what will that mean in practice for councils?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I think it's more about balancing up the relationship with the law. So tenants are now going to be in a stronger position. Removal of Section 21, changes to Section 8. But there is these greater expectations on local authorities now and regulators to do more. And some local authorities have already made huge strides, particularly in London and other places like Birmingham. I've seen them make real progress in recent years. But other local authorities are really busy at the moment in getting ready for these changes, working out what it means for them and what adjustments they're going to have to make to deal with this extra demand that's going to be coming from renters.
And I guess that's local authorities who haven't had selective licensing, so not had that mandatory enforcement in place up to now. Yeah,
no, I think licensing's got a role to play. You only have to look at the statistics. If you look at the GLA Road Landlord Checker and look at what local authorities are most prominent in terms of the enforcement, the regulatory work, it's those that have had large-scale licensing for some time. It's just you can't really argue with it. So licensing definitely has a part, but there's local authorities where maybe they've got smaller schemes. They still maybe have demand. There may not be the political will to go into licensing. That may change over time. But they're still going to have to respond to these other breaches or regulations, ensuring tenants are having their rights secured when those complaints arrive at councils. And there's been a long squeeze on resources, and there's not lots and lots of people like me, environmental health practitioners. We haven't trained enough people over the last decade or so. So the local authority is going to have to be really sort of quite creative, focus on processes. Something Metastreet works really hard on is providing the digital infrastructure to allow them to leverage the resources they've got. That can go an awful long way. A lot of the work we do is very process driven, and therefore having technology can do a lot of the heavy lifting is really important, and also for getting support and getting schemes set up that I know Transform do really well, guiding them through those early stages, allowing the authority to get on and do the important work, which is the inspections and the enforcement.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a big challenge, but in many ways it's an opportunity too.
Do you think collecting landlord data is enough, or does the real impact come from how the data is used?
Yeah, I think the obvious answer is no, it's definitely not enough. Just to have the data of a landlord. Obviously it matters to find the properties that are causing the harm to tenants or where those rights are being breached. But it often does start with intelligence, and a big chunk of intelligence is data, and leveraging it as much as possible. Lots of local authorities are dealing with tens and tens of thousands of properties. So finding the minority, and it is a minority, of properties where the real harm is being done can be a challenge. Often those, by their very nature, are hidden and the tenants don't want to be found sometimes. The landlord definitely doesn't want them to be found. And so this is where local authorities need to get smart and they need to get proactive. And there's some really good examples of that being done across the country. The use of data, their own data, and try and use some external data where it helps. And then, of course, just having other techniques. That's what local authorities do all the time, is work out who's compliant, who's not. And there are ways of achieving that without visiting every single property.
So you talked about hidden properties. On that, where do you think the most vulnerable tenants are? And how can councils and officers focus on those?
It's a really important question and a challenge. And so I think from a policy point of view, a decision needs to be made often quite high in the authority, at least at management level, that is what they're going to do. They are going to try and find the vulnerable groups, and they're going to do whatever they can to try and get to the bottom of what's going on. And once that decision is made, then it's a matter of just working with the experts, bringing in best practice, using data to start testing and pinpointing properties, these hidden properties where these poor conditions can be found. And so I think it's as much about officer mindset, and there are some really great examples out there.
So I know we've worked with your data to create enforcement policies, for example, for councils, so that they can prioritise at a street level which properties they need to go in and enforce.
Yes, absolutely. And so, it's data purely on its own is often backward looking, so it's still not 100% of the picture. There are still other important parts that go with it, but one of the real benefits of it gives you a clear view of the whole authority. You can take a helicopter view through the data and be able to target in the most intelligent way possible, and therefore get the best outcomes with the resources you have that will, in simple terms, the biggest bang for the bucks. And the data really allows you to work in that way. And as a practitioner, as a manager, all of the work we did really started with the data in identifying not just the correct streets, but also the incorrect properties, the types of properties. Is it HMOs? Is it single family? Are we looking for other types of disorder and stressors such as antisocial behaviour?
Slavery, I know that's been picked up.
Absolutely. So all of those processes can be honed, and with focus, councils, they've been seen to get some great results.
So with the right data, the right process and governance, the council can get a picture of the PRS of the problems, and then they can prioritise and triage how to deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like making a good cake, isn't it? You need really good ingredients. You bring those ingredients in the right way, and you end up with a really good result. Any one of those ingredients, if the practitioners are not necessarily there, or you don't have the data, or maybe you haven't got the right policies in place to utilise the enforcement powers, then the outcome's not going to be as strong. But those local authorities that have put that group of ingredients together have had some fantastic outcomes and have really achieved some really spectacular results.
How can services be designed to reach people who don't complain, for example, or who struggle to access support?
Yeah, now that can be challenging because there are some tenants that, for whatever reason, maybe they're just super busy just trying to raise their family. Maybe they're not aware of their rights, even though we might be. There are lots of tenants out there that won't be aware of their rights. Even if it's in the news every day, they won't be. And actually, it's quite complicated. Even the experts are sort of debating what it really means. And a lot of this stuff I have to go through court and be turned into case law. But there are ways of reaching out. You can reach out through partners. Right. So GP practices, where people are visiting for health reasons, or signposting through charities. And then, of course, I was always really focused on, let's just identify the properties where we think these people might be, and let's go and visit them and see if we can speak to them, as humans, find out what their challenges are, and then see what we can do to help. The risk is always they're in a run, particularly pre the abolition of Section 21, they're always in a situation where they're at risk of the retaliatory eviction. And those, even though we've got the laws to prevent or reduce it, it's still going to be that threat's still going to be there. And local authorities will need to think about how they support those tenants that are in those vulnerable positions, and there's some really good charity providers out there doing that. Well, and Cambridge House have been doing that sort of work for a long time. So there are options. I think I did just encourage officers, managers, directors, whoever's listening to this, to just reach out and speak to people, and the community is always quick to point you in the right direction.
I think you're right. It's like collaboration side of it that's really, really key, and making sure that the local authority is working with those charities and partners that are sort of out there on the coalface. So it's,
and they need maintaining, but it's worth the investment. Sometimes you literally need to have that face-to-face conversation with them and say the conditions you're living in is completely unacceptable. And often they'll say, really?
Didn't know.
Like their understanding of what's unacceptable is unbelievable. And often they'll say, well, it's much worse in the next borough. And often their resilience is incredible. Like they'll be raising a family, they'll be doing 2 jobs. So the more local authorities can get out into what I would describe as like the darker aspects of the private rented sector, which are hidden. You may walk past it on the way to work. You won't never know until someone tries to go try and get access to that property. But that's where the data becomes so important. Because how do you choose when you're dealing with a private rented sector that's 50,000, 60,000?
Really stretched. Which
you need to know what doors to knock on. And you're not going to get it right every time. But there are clues in the data. There are clues on the way up to knock the door. And then once you get through the door, good officers will be able to find their way to the people that are most vulnerable. I've worked with some amazing officers that have, really changed people's lives, saved people's lives. In the course of their work. They'll do it quietly. They won't be on YouTube. They'll be out today doing it. So it is happening, but we just need to do more of it, really.
So do you think improving internal systems is the best opportunity for long-term change in housing enforcement?
Yes. I think this is what we've been working on for the last 8 years. So the reason we started Metastreet was the absence of proper digital infrastructure support for this type of work, and it really held our service back. It was the bottleneck. And so particularly as technologies are developing, these are the tools that enable services to really lever the expertise. There's lots of fantastic officers. Most local authorities really want to go out there, do a great job, make people's lives better, but they're often held back with really poor, antiquated IT, and it's really frustrating. I notice there's a new generation of officers coming through that actually they're just not willing to put up with it anymore. So that's something we've invested a huge amount of money in. We now support like 31 local authorities. And the idea is we just try and make their job easier, make the processes simpler, make it easier for landlords to apply for a license, make it easier for tenants to complain, make it easier for officers to do their work, to do the enforcement they need to do, so they can see like bigger picture what's going on, make good decisions. We can demonstrate that now, that it's making huge differences. Recently put out a case study work with Birmingham on. They've achieved some astounding outcomes in a really short period of time, but it's all been sort of supported and levered really with good software that's designed for purpose. The next phase that we go into now in terms of AI first, there's another huge opening now to really massively lever up the work that's going on in local government. I think it's really exciting. It's a big change, but there is so much potential there.
With workforce capacity stretched, how can better use of data help councils prioritise?
Data is super important to be able to target, to be clever in where you're focusing your resources. Obviously, if you spread all your resources super thin, you're not going to get a huge outcome. But I was always taught that if you want to have a population level impact, then your intervention needs to be at the population level, which means you need to scale. And there's been lots of work going on in terms of workforce. Dr. George Stewart at Greenwich University has been doing some great work, but there's still a massive shortage. We're nowhere near enough qualified, competent officers. There are some great officers out there, just not enough of them.
It's a long-standing problem.
It is, and it's not going to go away quickly, but there is this opportunity that they can, through the use of software, through enhanced processes, through having more automation, coming of AI, they're going to be able to do more with the same resources. And that's really important. So it's sort of part of the picture, but the infrastructure is really like a cornerstone. We also need to train more. We need to train more really quickly and make the profession more attractive. And hopefully people watching this I would be the first to say great career. Definitely would do it again.
Making a difference.
Yeah, and you get paid well, and you get to go and help people. And there's not that many professions where you can tick both those boxes.
Absolutely. The Renters' Rights Act is a major shift for councils, bringing new responsibilities around enforcement, compliance, and tenant and landlord comms. It demands confident, coordinated responses. At Transform, we help local authorities navigate that change through strong programme governance, service redesign, data readiness, and targeted communications. Our practical, flexible approach ensures that councils can be compliant, operationally ready, and set up to raise standards across the private rented sector.